I want to start with a story. There was a young athlete, a sprinter, who trained every morning at sunrise, rain or shine, day after day. He wasn't the fastest, not yet, but he was relentless. He trained with an intensity that came not from competition, but from conviction. One morning, he pulled a muscle mid-stride. The pain was sharp, immediate. You could see it in his face. But he didn't stop running. He slowed, he adjusted, but he kept moving forward. Later, someone asked him, "Why didn't you stop when it hurt?" He said something so simple, it stayed with me. Because the pain was real, but stopping wouldn't have helped. The race doesn't wait. We are told in life that showing emotion makes us real. And that's true. But we often confuse showing emotion with surrendering to it. There is a difference between feeling hurt and letting hurt define your behavior. That difference is everything. To act as if nothing hurts you doesn't mean you deny pain, suppress it, or pretend it doesn't exist. It means you learn to stand in front of your pain without allowing it to control your decisions. It means you've understood something deeper. Pain is information, not identity. Think about this. How many of us were taught to react immediately when we're hurt? Someone says something unkind and we fire back. A failure embarrasses us and we shut down. A friend betrays us and we isolate. The world teaches us that pain justifies reaction. But it doesn't teach us that pain, when processed with wisdom, can become our greatest source of growth. There's a profound discipline in learning to pause when it hurts, not to suppress, but to observe. Because when you pause, you get to ask the better question, what is this pain trying to teach me? Instead of why me, you begin asking, what now? I've sat with leaders who've had to make impossible decisions in the middle of heartbreak. CEOs who've had to announce layoffs to people they care about. Founders whose startups collapsed after years of sweat and sacrifice. And they don't walk into those moments untouched by pain. They walk in having chosen how to carry it. You can tell the difference. Some crumble in chaos. Others become steady. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because they understand that the response is where leadership lives. Imagine if every time you were hurt, you acted from the wound. Every disagreement, every disappointment, every failure, you let it speak for you. What kind of life would that build? What kind of leader would that make you? Now imagine this. Every time life threw a punch, you felt it, but you didn't flinch. You stood tall, not because you're numb, but because you've trained your response. You've taught yourself that pain is not the final word, that self-control is more powerful than self-expression in moments of crisis. There's a quote I heard once that never left me. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. It's not about weakness or silence. It's about strength under control. The ability to feel everything and yet still make the right choice. That's real power. The challenge is we live in a world that rewards reaction. We scroll through highlight reels of people reacting, going off, breaking down, calling out. The loudest emotion gets the most attention, but the most influential people I've ever met, those who lead, inspire, create change, they are quiet in their storm. They carry that pain with dignity. They don't hide it. But they don't hand it the microphone either. I once worked with a woman who lost a family member unexpectedly and still showed up to lead a meeting the next day. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. I asked her later why she didn't cancel. She said, because I needed to remind myself that I can be both hurting and helpful, that I can show up for others even while I'm healing. That's it, right there. The strength isn't in pretending everything is fine. It's in knowing that even when everything isn't fine, you're still capable, you're still valuable, you're still here. And that matters. If we want to be leaders, not just in companies, but in families and friendships, in life, we must learn the art of responding, not reacting. The power of pause, the courage to stay calm when chaos beckons. Because the world doesn't need more people who explode when they're in pain. It needs more people who can feel deeply but lead wisely. When you act as if nothing hurts you, what you're really doing is declaring that you are more than your circumstances. You're refusing to let temporary pain make permanent decisions. You're choosing composure not because you're cold, but because you're clear. Clarity in pain is rare, but it can be trained. It starts with small choices. The next time someone insults you, don't bite back. Breathe. The next time you fail, don't spiral. Reflect. The next time you're disappointed, don't isolate. Engage. These are the tiny victories that over time build an unshakable presence. And one day, someone will ask you, how do you stay so calm? Doesn't this hurt? And you'll smile, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you've learned the truth. Pain is part of the process, but it doesn't get to be the pilot. You'll have become the person who acts as if nothing hurts, not to impress others, but to stay connected to purpose. Because pain doesn't go away, but how you carry it can change everything. There's a moment in every leader's journey when they realize something that changes everything. People aren't looking for someone flawless. They're looking for someone steady. We often believe we have to be perfect to be respected, that we must never show weakness, never make mistakes, never admit when we're wrong. We carry ourselves like polished statues, hoping that if we just appear invulnerable enough, others will follow us. But that's not how real trust is built, and that's not how leadership works. And let me tell you about a man I met years ago. He was a project manager in a mid-sized company. Not someone famous, not someone with a spotlight. But the moment you walked into the room, you felt his presence. His team would run through walls for him. You could see it in how they talked about him, how they leaned in when he spoke. I once asked one of his team members, what makes him so good? And the answer was simple. He never pretends to be perfect. But when things go wrong, he never disappears. He stays. He leads. We trust him because we know he'll never run from the fire. That's the kind of strength people follow. It's not loud. It's not arrogant. It doesn't seek to impress. It simply shows up when it matters most. We've been sold a version of leadership that looks more like a movie poster than a human being. Flawless, unshaken, always right. And we wonder why so many people feel like they're not cut out to lead. The truth is, leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being the calm in the storm, the steady hand when things fall apart. That's strength. And it's far more compelling than perfection. The reason people follow strength is because life is uncertain. Plans break, people leave, numbers fall short. And in those moments, we're all looking for someone who won't crumble. Not someone who's never failed, but someone who knows how to keep moving through failure. Think about the moments in your life when you felt truly safe around someone. I'm willing to bet it wasn't because they had perfect credentials or a flawless track record. It was probably because, even in chaos, they were grounded. They didn't panic. They didn't pretend everything was fine. They simply held their ground. And by doing so, they gave you permission to do the same. Perfection is intimidating. It creates distance. But strength, real strength, creates connection. It's not uncommon to hear a leader say, I don't want my team to see me struggling. But that's not strength. That's fear wearing a mask. True strength says, yes, this is hard. Yes, I'm stretched, but I'm still here and I'm still in this with you. People don't follow perfection. They follow presence. They follow someone who's committed to them, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. I once worked with a founder whose startup went through a brutal season. Sales tanked, investors pulled back, and morale hit rock bottom. Everyone expected him to walk in with some grand solution. He didn't. He walked in, looked his team in the eye, and said, I don't have all the answers, but I'm not going anywhere. We're going to figure this out together. That single sentence did more than any spreadsheet or strategy session ever could. Because in that moment, his team didn't need a genius. They needed someone they could count on. And that's who he chose to be. When we chase perfection, we create pressure. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. We set a tone that says mistakes are unacceptable, vulnerability is weakness, and asking for help is a flaw. And then we wonder why our teams feel anxious, why people burn out, why innovation dies. Strength does the opposite. Strength creates safety. It creates a space where people feel seen, where they know it's okay to speak up, to admit uncertainty, to try and fail. And that kind of environment, that's where creativity thrives. That's where real loyalty begins. Not because you're perfect, but because you're human and dependable. There's another layer to this too. People follow strength because it shows them what's possible. When you stay grounded through adversity, when you take responsibility instead of casting blame, when you choose consistency over charisma, that becomes a blueprint for others. It gives them permission to rise to their own strength, not by copying you, but by finding the courage to be steady themselves. And here's something no one tells you early on. Being strong doesn't mean being the strongest. It doesn't mean you never break down, never cry, never ask for help. It simply means you keep showing up. You take ownership. You build trust with actions, not just words. Strength is found in the leader who listens when others shout, in the parent who stays calm when the kids lose control, in the friend who doesn't walk away just because the conversation gets uncomfortable. These are the quiet pillars people lean on. These are the people we remember, not because they dazzled us, but because they were there when it mattered most. The irony is, the pursuit of perfection often leads to fragility. But the pursuit of strength, real, grounded, human strength, leads to resilience. And resilience is magnetic. There's a moment in every crisis, every heated conversation, every unexpected challenge where you have a choice. You can react or you can respond. The difference is everything. We live in a world that moves fast, too fast. News cycles spin every hour. Social media pushes us to respond immediately, and the pressure to have an answer right now has never been higher. And yet, the most powerful people I've met, the ones who lead with clarity, with strength, with grace, they all have one thing in common. They're composed. Not cold, not robotic, composed. It's easy to mistake composure for passivity, as if calmness means weakness. But composure is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. Standing in the middle of the storm and choosing not to be the storm. That's real control. That's leadership. I remember sitting across the table from a senior executive during one of the most tense negotiations I've ever witnessed. The room was heavy, tempers flared, voices raised, but she never once raised her voice. She didn't fidget, she didn't rush. She listened, she asked precise questions, and when she spoke, every person in that room leaned in. Why? Because her composure commanded the room. Not her power, not her title, her calm. After the meeting, I asked her how she did it. She smiled and said, because the one who stays calm controls the temperature. That line stuck with me. The one who stays calm controls the temperature. In any environment, work, family, friendship, someone sets the tone. And the one who chooses composure over chaos becomes the thermostat, not the thermometer. They influence the atmosphere rather than merely reflect it. And that's where real control lies. Most people think control is about dominance, about having the last word, calling the shots, being in charge. But that's not control. That's often insecurity in disguise. True control is when you don't let someone else's behavior dictate yours. When your values speak louder than your emotions. When you stay grounded even when everything around you is shaking. That kind of self-control doesn't happen by accident. It's not natural. It's trained. It's chosen. It's built. Moment by moment, decision by decision, breath by breath. There's something deeply human about the impulse to react. We're wired for it. It's protective. It's fast. Someone criticizes us and we want to defend. Someone betrays us and we want to shut down. A situation turns unfair and we want to fight. And in some cases, those responses are valid. But we have to ask ourselves, does reacting get me closer to who I want to be? Does it move me toward what matters? And the answer, more often than not, is no. Responding is different. Responding means we pause. We evaluate. We stay in control of our voice, our tone, our presence. We don't abandon the moment. We engage it with clarity. That's what composure does. It slows everything down so we can see clearly. And when we see clearly, we choose wisely. I once spoke with a leader in the military who said something that changed the way I thought about pressure. He said, when the bullets fly, the loudest person is usually the least useful. What he meant was that panic doesn't solve problems, composure does. In the most chaotic, high-stakes environments in the world, the people who lead don't necessarily have all the answers, but they stay calm enough to find them. And this applies everywhere. You don't need a uniform or a title to be someone who carries composure. You just need a commitment to stay centered when others get lost. Think about a parent who keeps their cool when their child is having a meltdown, or a manager who doesn't lash out when a project fails, or a partner who listens first in an argument instead of trying to win it. These moments matter because in those moments, you model something powerful, that we are not ruled by emotion. We are guided by intention. People don't remember every word we say, but they remember how they felt around us. They remember whether they felt safe, whether they felt heard, whether they felt respected. And composure is often the reason for that feeling. But here's the truth. It's hard. Staying composed when you're frustrated, hurt, disrespected, overlooked, that takes incredible strength. And it's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally intelligent. Knowing when to speak, when to hold silence, when to stand firm and when to let go. And sometimes composure means walking away. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Because not every battle is worth your peace. And not every provocation deserves your energy. The more composed you become, the more control you gain. Not over others, but over yourself. And that's the kind of control that changes things, because when you're no longer easily shaken, you become the person others look to. You become the one who leads, not because of position, but because of presence. If there's one thing we can all practice every day, it's this: the pause. Before we speak, pause. Before we react, pause. Before we decide, pause. That pause is the space where composure lives. And in that space, we get to choose who we want to be. So when the moment comes, and it will, when everything feels urgent and emotions run high, remember, your strength is not proven by your volume, it's proven by your poise. You don't need to win the moment, you need to own it. Control isn't about having power over others, it's about having power over yourself. And that kind of control, it starts with composure. Every time you react to something, you're sending a message. Whether you realize it or not, you're teaching the people around you what you're willing to accept, what you value, and most importantly, how they're allowed to treat you. It's not about being manipulative, it's about being intentional. You see, we don't just live in a world that responds to who we are, we live in a world that mirrors how we behave. And your reactions are often the clearest signals you send. Think about someone you respect deeply. Not just for what they do, but for how they carry themselves. I bet their strength isn't just in their skills, it's in how they hold their ground when challenged. It's in how they choose not to retaliate when provoked. It's in how they draw boundaries, not with anger, but with clarity. That's not luck. That's not personality. That's discipline. That's teaching the world how to treat you. A friend once told me about a boss she had early in her career. Brilliant guy, respected by the whole company. But more than that, he had this quiet power. No one raised their voice in meetings, not because they were afraid, but because he didn't. No one gossiped around him, not because it was a rule, but because he didn't engage in it. He set a standard and people rose to it. Without ever demanding respect, he earned it. Not through control, but through consistency. That's the essence of it. People learn from how you respond, not from what you demand. If someone crosses a line, and you laugh it off, consciously or not, you're saying that line didn't matter. If you keep showing up for people who never show up for you without ever having the hard conversation, you're saying this is okay. And if you explode every time something doesn't go your way, you're giving others the manual on how to control you. The world reads your behavior far more than it hears your words. And we've all been guilty of sending the wrong message. We stay silent when we should speak up. We overreact when we should breathe. We tolerate when we should teach. But here's the good news. Just as we've taught people how to treat us through past reactions, we can retrain them by changing how we respond moving forward. It starts by recognizing that every interaction is an opportunity. Every time someone interrupts you, criticizes you unfairly, disrespects your time, you have a chance to either reinforce the behavior or reset the expectation. And no, resetting the expectation doesn't mean yelling or shaming or creating distance. Often it simply looks like calm clarity. I don't appreciate being spoken to that way. This isn't a conversation I'm willing to have if it's going to go in that direction. I value our relationship too much to let this pattern continue. Simple, direct, composed. These aren't power plays, they're principles. And the people around you, they notice. They adjust. Boundaries don't have to be loud to be respected. They just have to be clear and consistent. Because the moment people see you're willing to abandon your own standards just to avoid discomfort, they stop trusting those standards altogether, not because they're cruel or manipulative, but because we've shown them that our values are negotiable under pressure. That when you respond from a place of grounded intention, especially in uncomfortable moments, you teach the world your integrity is not up for grabs. I once coached a young professional who struggled with being taken seriously in meetings. She was competent, intelligent, and worked harder than most. But she told me, people keep interrupting me. They talk over me. It's like I'm not even in the room. And we dug into it. And what we found was this. Every time someone interrupted her, she let it happen. Every time someone dismissed her idea, she smiled politely and moved on. She didn't push back, not because she lacked strength, but because she thought silence was the high road. Here's what changed. The next time someone interrupted her, she gently said, "I'd like to finish my point if that's okay." That's it. One sentence. But everything shifted. Not because of the sentence, but because of what it represented. And she started teaching the room how to treat her by how she reacted. Respect is often less about being liked and more about being clear. And when you start choosing reactions that reflect who you want to be rather than what the moment provokes, people start aligning to your example. Now, let's be honest. This isn't always easy. Sometimes it's easier to avoid the moment, to let things slide, to retreat instead of confront. But in doing so, we're not protecting peace. We're just postponing discomfort. And discomfort doesn't dissolve on its own. It grows. It festers. And eventually it speaks for us in ways we can't control, through burnout, resentment, withdrawal. So instead, choose to speak when it's hardest. Choose to model the kind of respect you expect. Choose to respond not just with emotion, but with intention. Because every reaction you give is either an invitation or a boundary. An invitation for people to keep doing what they're doing, or a boundary that says, this is who I am and this is what I value. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get it right every time, but you do have to be aware. And you do have to be consistent. Because the world learns from what you tolerate, and you are the first teacher. So if you want to be treated with respect, speak with it. If you want to be surrounded by honesty, live it. If you want people to handle you with care, show them how through the way you handle yourself. You teach the world how to treat you, not by raising your voice, but by raising your standards. Not by demanding better, but by being better. And the moment you realize that your reactions aren't just personal, they're instructional, is the moment you start living not at the mercy of the world, but in partnership with it. When things fall apart, most people look for someone who can hold it together. In chaos, we think we need louder voices, faster action, bigger gestures. But what people really crave in the middle of a storm is someone who remains calm, someone who slows down the moment, someone who brings clarity, not confusion. Staying calm doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you aren't feeling the pressure or the weight of responsibility. It means you've learned to carry that weight without letting it crush the people around you. That's real power. The ability to regulate yourself when everything else is spinning out of control. We've all seen it. When pressure hits, many people start to unravel. Voices rise, tempers flare, fingers point. And underneath all of that noise is often fear. Fear of being blamed, fear of losing control, fear of not having the answer. But the ones who make a lasting difference in those moments are the ones who resist that chaos. They don't ignore it, they just don't become it. I once watched a leader walk into a room moments after her team had just lost a major client. People were panicking. Some were angry. Others were trying to explain what happened, scrambling for solutions. She said nothing at first. She just listened. Then she calmly said, okay, let's start with what we know. Let's figure this out together. The moment she spoke, the energy in the room shifted, not because she had a magic answer, but because her presence created space. Her calm became their calm. And that's the kind of influence that doesn't need a title to be felt. We don't rise to the level of our emotions and chaos. We rise to the level of our training. And if we haven't trained ourselves to stay grounded, to breathe, to slow down, we'll be swept away by every unexpected wave. But when we build that discipline, when we choose presence over panic, we earn the kind of respect that can't be bought or demanded, it's felt. The truth is, anyone can be composed when things are going well. It's easy to be gracious when you're winning. It's easy to be generous when you have more than enough. But who are you when it's falling apart? That's the test. That's where your leadership is revealed, not built, but revealed. And in that space, calm is not a luxury, it's a necessity. There's a misconception that calmness is passive, that it's weak, that it's doing nothing. But calmness is incredibly active. It takes effort to stay steady when adrenaline is pushing you to act fast. It takes awareness to be thoughtful when everything in you wants to react. And it takes humility to admit you don't have the answer while still holding the confidence to guide others forward. People remember how you made them feel when things were hard. They remember whether your presence brought peace or pressure. They remember whether you added to the noise or became a source of clarity. And here's the thing about calmness, it's contagious. Just like panic spreads, so does calm. When one person stays grounded, others start to find their footing too. It's like the eye of the storm. Everything around it is swirling and dangerous, but in the center there's stillness. That stillness doesn't stop the storm, but it gives people a place to catch their breath, to think, to choose their next step with intention. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room, you just need to be the most stable. That's real power. The kind that doesn't draw attention to itself, but changes everything around it. Sometimes being calm means not reacting right away. It means pausing before replying to the email that upset you. It means listening before interrupting. It means taking a walk instead of launching into an argument. It means protecting your peace, not as an escape, but as a strategy. Because when you lose your calm, you often lose your clarity. And when you lose clarity, you stop leading and start reacting. You become part of the chaos instead of the solution to it. The best decisions are rarely made in a state of panic. They're made when we step back, zoom out, and re-engage with purpose. Calmness gives you that space. It creates room for wisdom to rise, for perspective to form, for connection to deepen. And it doesn't mean you're emotionless. It means your emotions don't own you. In personal relationships, staying calm helps you protect what matters. You don't have to prove your point with volume. You don't have to win the argument with force. Calmness invites trust. It gives others permission to be honest without fear. It makes hard conversations possible. And in that space, growth happens. In professional settings, calm leaders build strong culture. They attract loyalty because people know they won't be thrown under the bus when something goes wrong. They earn trust because they don't overreact to every change. They empower others because they don't create fear, they create focus. The world doesn't need more people who can yell louder. It needs more people who can stay quiet long enough to hear what's really going on. It needs people who can walk into the fire without becoming it. People who don't make decisions just to feel in control, but who stay steady until the right decision becomes clear. That's the kind of power we need more of. Not performative strength, but practiced calm. Not forceful dominance, but earned trust. Not control over others, but command over self. You can't control the chaos, but you can control your presence in it. And when you do, you change the way others show up too. So when the storm hits, and it will, you get to decide who you're going to be. Are you going to react like everyone else? Or are you going to be the one who stays calm, stays grounded, and leads not by force, but by example? Because real power isn't in controlling the world. It's in controlling yourself.